Welcome back to another episode of the BioHub. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Kevin Warner, SVP of Medical Affairs Strategy and Engagement at Heron Therapeutics. Dr. Warner brings 2 decades of experience in clinical and infusion pharmacy, with a special focus on pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, and antimicrobial stewardship. He has been instrumental in co-developing the VTX7 intra-articular antibiotic irrigation therapy, and has played a crucial role in numerous committees dedicated to improving patient care. At Heron Therapeutics, Dr. Warner is at the forefront of enhancing recovery after surgery and developing innovative pharmaceutical products using their proprietary Biochronomer drug delivery platform. With his extensive background and dedication to advancing patient care, Dr. Warner is a true leader in the pharmaceutical industry. We're excited to dive into his journey, explore Heron's groundbreaking work, and discuss the future of pharmaceutical innovation. Welcome to the show. How are you, Kevin?
Doing great, Max. Pleasure to be here. Appreciate the invite.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Let's jump straight in. So just to start off, Kevin, you're looking at your background and how diverse it's been in clinical and infusion pharmacy. What led you to join Heron, and how's the journey been so far?
Yeah, I didn't take the normal pathway to the industry side, most would say, and that wasn't my objective starting out. As I progressed through school, my target was always healthcare. I knew I wanted to do something medical growing up. I liked math and science, and most people with those desires and passions kind of find their way towards healthcare. My family was in healthcare, so I knew I'd end up in some level of care in the healthcare setting, and I picked pharmacy. I knew I could touch multiple patients multiple times a day in the pharmaceutical world, not having a specific specialty per se, but being well-versed and well-rounded across the healthcare industry and understanding different disease states. As I started my pharmaceutical career, I started in the hospital setting, really took a focus and a passion and liking to the perioperative space. So I started focusing on perioperative medicine. So pre-op antimicrobial prophylaxis, VTE prophylaxis, intra-op hemostasis, post-op pain management, post-op nausea, vomiting. So these are the things that really affect the economics of our healthcare facilities. In today's economic climate, everything is essentially about throughput, if you will. Learning how to do surgery on a same-day model and enhancing recovery after surgery. So our patients' primary concerns when they come in are post-op pain and post-op nausea, vomiting. Those are the things you feel, right? That's what you feel when you go through surgery. So I had a passion in that space and developing protocols and optimizing the care for these patients so we could have them come in same day and leave same day and have a nice functional recovery. So in that regard, I started focusing on multimodal pain management, and that's how I got my introduction to Heron Therapeutics, actually. Studied one of their medications at my institution, implementing it as the foundation of our post-op pain management, saw significant improvements as far as length of stay and decreasing opioid consumption. It's kind of a negative snowball once your patients start taking opioids, if you will. They take opioid number 1, guess what happens? Constipation, urinary retention, nausea, vomiting, all metrics we need controlled before we can safely discharge that patient. So after studying their medication, which was ZynRelief, I was contacted by the company to join their speakers bureau, and thought, sure, this would be a great opportunity to get introduced to a broad scope of providers and spread the word on the impact we can have for these patients. So after speaking for nearly 2 years for the company, there was some turnover at the top, and an opportunity came to join the industry side. So it was a non-conventional pathway, but after 20 years of working in the healthcare setting, in the hospital, having that bedside care, I thought it was a great opportunity to see it from the other side and impact not just thousands of patients at my institution, but the millions of patients across the nation. So it was an opportunity I couldn't turn down, and my first 6 months here has been very enjoyable, and I'm excited for what the future holds.
Yeah, I think your road in is actually really fascinating. I suppose I look at it from like a recruitment standpoint, and yeah, it's just worked really well for you to almost move across. And if you were going to make that switch to biotech, this was like the best way it could have happened.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it just really fit my my focus and my specialty, my areas that I've really excelled in, and changing the paradigm as we continue to try to change the perioperative paradigm. One of my other big focuses was always perioperative infection and orthopedic surgery specifically, which is one of our primary products. Main utilization is in orthopedic surgery. With my involvement in orthopedic surgery, I co-developed a product, as you mentioned in the intro, of ETX7 for the treatment of periprosthetic joint infection. Very dismal outcome for most patients that develop a periprosthetic joint infection here in the United States. We just don't have great treatment options. And so we were able to advance that practice with the BTX7 direct intra-articular antimicrobial therapy and really change how those patients that get that diagnosis perceive what their chances of a positive outcome are. So that connection really, kind of bridged me also to this step to industry as I got my feet wet, in the industry side, learning the FDA approval process and going from start to finish and the different connections you need to make to bring a product to market. So having that little bit of commercial understanding from my involvement there definitely bridged my gap over to the commercial side.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And I just want to talk more specifically about Heron's story and also what makes the company so unique, especially in the pharma landscape.
Yeah, so Heron Therapeutics was originally called AP Pharma, so Advanced Polymer Technologies. So what Heron Therapeutics focuses on is taking molecules and finding a better delivery method, if you will. For instance, the flagship product currently, Zinrelief, for postoperative pain management, uses two very well-known products, one being bupivacaine, which is an anesthetic, and the other meloxicam, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. And they combine the two drugs into their Biochronomer technology polymer. And the polymer allows us for an extended release of these medications. We all understand what anesthetics are. Many of us have been to the dentist. Well, I hope all of us have been to the dentist before, but we likely wouldn't want to go to the dentist if they said, oh, we ran out of anesthetics today, but I'm still going to do that root canal. I don't think I'd volunteer for that. So we've understood the power of anesthetics, right? So at Heron Therapeutics, with their polymer technologies, it said, hey, we can harness the power of an anesthetic, but we can extend its duration of action. So most anesthetics only work for 8 hours, 12 hours. And then what happens to our patients in the surgical paradigm? They rely on opioids after that, right? And so we understand the negative impacts of opioids and what they've done to our community and how addictive they are. And just the negative impacts, just even if you're not addicted, each opioid decreases your recovery and your function. So having something like an anesthetic that now instead of 8 to 12 hours, it lasts for 72 hours. And it's because of that polymer delivering it, but it's also because of the synergy with the meloxicam that's in the polymer, maintaining the efficacy of the bupivacaine. So it's really interesting science as far as what they can do with the polymer. When they're looking at these polymers and deciding, hey, do I want the product to work 72 hours, 96 hours? Do I want to go 5 days, 7 days? That's an option for the polymer. And when they polled the various surgeons and medical professionals, they said, that the pain paradigm and what we really need to cover is that first 72 hours. That's when it's critical. That's when it's severe for our patients. That's when they're really relying on opioids typically. So they decided 72 hours was going to be the best thing to have that polymer for post-op pain. Another example is one of their chemotherapy-induced nausea vomiting prophylaxis products, Sustol. So it takes granisetron, which is a 5-HT3 antagonist, much like Zofran. A lot of people have heard of Zofran, but it's also in the polymer, but it delivers the power of granisetron for 5 days. So just an example of what they can do. So now our patients undergoing chemotherapy that have these multiple cycles, they typically go in, receive their chemotherapy, and the onset of chemotherapy-induced nausea vomiting can be acute immediately after. It can be delayed a couple days, 3, 4, 5 days after that cycle. And when those patients start having vomiting or nausea and vomiting when they're at home, they end up with clinical complications, dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, end up in your ER for hydration or an admission to the hospital. So having something on board that can thus control it for the 5 days was another unique application of the polymer. Heron has 2 other products. So it is interesting. This is a very small biopharma company to have 4 FDA-approved products is very rare. The other 2 products are formulations of aprepitant, which is an NK1 antagonist for nausea vomiting. One's indicated for CINV, and that's Cinvanti, and the other is indicated for post-operative nausea vomiting. And that's Aponvie. Aponvie is one of the coolest pharmaceutical drug names I've ever seen. I just want to mention that. Most of the time, you don't know where to come up with these names, right? They make them very hard to pronounce, I think, on purpose, and nobody can remember them then. But Aponvie is actually an acronym. We live in a texting acronym world, right? But it stands for aprepitant, for post-operative nausea vomiting injectable emulsion. So I was really appreciative of that name, and it has PONV right in it, so you know what it's for. You know, it's the injectable emulsion formulation. This is very unique product. So Emend is already manufactured, which is fosaprepitant. But large pharma for years was trying to develop an injectable form of aprepitant, but they couldn't figure out how to stabilize the molecule. It's a very fragile molecule. The oral forms are not absorbed very well. So it's difficult to work with, if you will. And the science that Heron Therapeutics had with their emulsions and their polymers, they were able to make that into a stable formulation that we could now provide the active drug, aprepitant, immediately via IV push. So for Cinvanti for chemotherapy-induced nausea vomiting, and Aponvie now is just a 30-second IV push in the perioperative phase for post-op nausea vomiting. So they take molecules that are known at Heron Therapeutics and make them deliverable and thus more effective for our patients in the surgical paradigm and in the chemotherapy paradigm.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you said it's really rare for a company of your size to have 4 approved products. Is there anything else coming through that the company's working on, to potentially even make that look even better?
Yeah, definitely. So our company has a great team that we're built on. The foundation of our team been involved with multiple pharmaceutical companies, multiple FDA approvals. We definitely have the skills and the appetite to bring new products to market. But we're also commercialization experts at this point. So the research pipeline is minimal, but we are looking at expanding that with our polymer because it has so many uses with our polymers and emulsions and drugs that we can make better use of. But we're also actively looking at M&A as far as expanding because we got a great commercial team. We did a right sizing of the company. There was an activist investor takeover about a year and a half ago now, and a right sizing of the company that really turned everything around financially. But the team we have now are the experts, and the optimization of our team has turned that boat around, that ship around, if you will. Now we're headed the other direction to expansion and figuring out what other things that are accretive to us that possibly fit our focus of enhanced recovery, whether it's chemotherapy induced type nausea vomiting and recovering, after chemotherapy, or whether it's in the perioperative phase for post-op nausea vomiting or post-operative pain or anything else that might fit in that bag, if you will, as far as the perioperative recovery. So definitely looking at those expansions, those opportunities, and we got the resources to do so.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually was going to ask a question about what key milestones you have achieved in recent years, and then also what excites you about the company's future. I suppose you tackled the future a little bit, but what have been the main key milestones that you've gone through over the recent years?
Yeah, so some of the key things over the recent years, obviously, it was inopportune when ZYNRELEF was actually approved in 2021, essentially peak COVID. So most institutions were in a contraction phase and not really expanding or looking at branded products whatsoever, which also is not common for branded products to make it into the acute care setting very often. You really have to have clinical superiority, which ZYNRELEF was the first product to prove superior to bupivacaine in clinical trials across 3 different trials against standard of care, bupivacaine for pain reduction, opioid reduction, and severe pain reduction. So even with that clinical resume, if you will, it was difficult for them to launch in that paradigm. Hospitals were really budget conscious, and we just really weren't making changes, and in some instances, not even doing surgeries, right? So the approval of ZYNRELEF was a huge milestone, obviously in 2021, being the first ever labeled extended release anesthetic. So no other product on the market can state that they're an extended release anesthetic. So that's a game changer and a paradigm changer. Just inopportune in 2021. But as that information has come out, And as we've got out of COVID and we're coming back to a normal surgical paradigm and we're really focusing on enhanced recovery after surgery, we're starting to see that ground movement, if you will. We're starting that wave and that momentum of the education as we swing and we change the paradigm to, oh, this is the standard of practice. This should be the foundation of your multimodal analgesia. Followed closely after 2021 was the approval of APONVIE in the following year. So that was another great milestone for Heron Therapeutics. So 2 drug approvals for a small company in back-to-back years. With ZYNRELEF specifically, though, we had multiple label expansions also, with our latest one being this January. And it was really the label that Heron wanted in the first place. So that was before my time, so I won't say we. But in January, we received the full label for ZYNRELEF. So now ZYNRELEF is indicated for all soft tissue procedures and all orthopedic surgical procedures in which you avoid direct exposure to articular cartilage. So essentially anything you can think of, it could be an application for ZYNRELEF. So the way I put it is any procedure that your patient's going to undergo that you would typically prescribe an opioid for, you should be thinking about utilizing ZYNRELEF to minimize those needs for opioids. So that was a huge milestone there as far as getting that final full label. So now when institutions look at it, they can say, oh, we can either just bring this on. This is our new foundation. We don't have to think procedure to procedure. Who's allowed to use this? How do we restrict this? They're now FDA approved and supported for all of these indications. So that was a wonderful milestone. Another milestone was our CrossLink partnership, which was also initiated in January of this year, and it's really just starting to roll out now. The education takes some time. We started our training events in March, and we'll continue to train through the end of the year. Originally planned, our target was about 650 trained additional reps. The CrossLink partnership are metal and device representatives, and they're out in the field. They have the relationships with these surgeons, but they'll also be teaching and educating and raising awareness of ZYNRELEF also now. So 650 was the target by the end of the year, and we're already quickly approaching that. So we expect to go well beyond that 650 based on what we've seen now. So that awareness that they're going to bring is going to be critical to the expansion of ZYNRELEF in combination with our new expanded label is really going to be synergistic. It does take time to see that and that pull through just because of the pharmacy and therapeutics process committee and the time it takes for IT to build electronic medical records, so on and so forth. It can take 6 to 8 months from the time a surgeon gets introduced to it, sees the clinical paradigm it can provide, and then get it implemented through the hospital doors. So that can be a process. So with CrossLink just starting in March and that wave starting, you start to see the fruits of that, really it's a 2025 story. Another milestone that we're anxiously awaiting is the approval of the vial access needle. So this was developed all internally. Pretty novel, if you will, as far as we developed a device that improves the aseptic process of withdrawing a drug from a vial. So any drug in the surgical paradigm, you're always worried about the sterility of it and the aseptic process to not contaminate your surgical wound. And so a lot of times, providers and the OR circulators and staff have to manipulate these products to withdraw them from vials that are not sterile. And so what this device does, the vial access needle, it encapsulates the entire vial, allowing it to be sterile. So now your sterile personnel can freely touch that, withdraw the things they need, and it's not as cumbersome. So it improves the safety for the patient and the surgical paradigm. But also the other thing it does for ZYNRELEF specifically is because of the viscosity. So one of the barriers to use with ZYNRELEF thus far, things we've heard as negative feedback, was it takes a couple minutes to draw out of the vial because it is very viscous. It's like honey, if you will. And that's by design, and that's the polymer. But it usually takes about 2 minutes to withdraw it out of the vial. With the vial access needle, that goes down to about 20 to 30 seconds. So it removes that, but also enhances that aseptic process. So we have a PDUFA date of September 23rd for that. So that'll be another milestone, another piece. And really that's the ultimate, combination of CrossLink, the expanded label, the vial access needle, where we can really just focus on the awareness, additional data, indications, looking at it and all these expanded indications that we have now, and really make it the foundation or standard of care, if you will. So those milestones with ZYNRELEF, the label expansions, the VAN, the APONVIE's approval, all amazing, great things, along with Sustol and Cinvanti. Those are stable products. Cinvanti is $100 million plus. Sustal is about $10 million annually. So they're very stable. They're already Cinvanti's grade 1A evidence in the NCCN guidelines for cancer chemotherapy. So that medication's been established as one of the safest, most efficient medications in the practice for a long time. It's really a great opportunity here at Heron as far as where we are in our growth cycle and the milestones that have all been so recent, although in a clouded space in that 2021, 2022 area. But as we come out of that and our surgical paradigms are moving and we're really switching to this enhanced recovery after surgery and same day discharge, with the two most common problems being PONV and post-op pain that keep patients in your hospital, we really have great opportunities and great products to solve those problems, not only just for a short term or acutely while they're in your hospital, but once the patient's out of sight, they shouldn't be out of mind. We have two innovative solutions, one for post-op pain with ZYNRELEF that lasts 72 hours, and a PONV for post-op nausea vomiting, which lasts for 48 hours. So it's really going to facilitate our patients going to that model, and we're not just sending them out, not worrying about them. Oh, they're out of sight. We don't care if they have pain and nausea vomiting. We know we're supporting them at home still, and we're providing that care for those patients on a continuum.
Yeah, you guys are, smashing it. I think sometimes when I ask that question, it can get a rather short response. But for you, there's so much that's been going on. There's so much positivity. It's amazing. It's so good.
Yeah, I'd add one piece to it, a little additional to the response. One of the big milestones, I guess, for us just recently happened. It wasn't necessarily internal at Heron. It's more of a milestone for the nation, if you will.
Okay.
It's what's called the No Pain Act. So CMS just released their prospective payment system, and within it contains the No Pain Act piece in which CMS, Medicare, Medicaid, is going to provide reimbursement for non-opioids that have been proven to reduce opioid consumption. So they're well aware of the opioid epidemic and the negative impacts it has on our communities and the costs on our healthcare system. So they didn't want barriers to the access of these non-opioid products that can be utilized for post-op analgesia and reduce the need for opioids and the subsequent sequelae. So they didn't want people to use cheaper alternatives like opioids. So they wanted to remove those financial barriers. And so they're reimbursing these outside of the surgical bundle all the way through 2027 and likely beyond. And because of the clinical criteria within the Act, stating specifically ZYNRELEF is a named product in the Act, that it will be reimbursed because it's a non-opioid that reduces the need for opioids as proven in clinical trial as part of the need to get in this Act. So that statement in itself with the clinical criteria will have other commercial payers also following on. The commercial payers will look at that and see the clinical criteria behind it, understand they too need to provide the reimbursement for their covered lives to do the right thing for the patient, but also the cost efficacy of it overall for the healthcare paradigm makes sense too. So that's monumental. That starts and goes into effect in 2025.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I really wanted to move this on as well because when we spoke last, we talked a lot about Craig, the CEO of Heron Therapeutics. How has his vision influenced the company's direction and success?
Yeah, Craig Collard, our CEO, is very well known and respected in the industry, leading multiple other companies through multiple takeovers and acquisitions, building them essentially from the ground up and really turning them around. Just to talk about him as a leader and the comfort he brings. He's one of the reasons I'm here. Just the conversations we had, I really was mixed feelings about leaving practice to come to the industry side and totally detaching. But his vision and the people around him is really what brought me here. The confidence his people have. Basically, much of our team now, much of the executive and the leadership group have come from companies that Craig was previously at. And it goes to show they follow him because he's a great leader. He supports his people. He knows his information. He's there in the field with his people. Me and Craig have done multiple events now together, working shoulder to shoulder. And it's not often in a pharma company that you would even see your CEO, let alone talk to him day-to-day basis, wants to know what's going on, wants to understand every aspect of the company. He takes the time, he puts in the effort, and he really makes everybody feel comfortable, if you will. Just a great guy, and appreciate having him as a CEO.
Yeah, because the way I got you on the show, Kevin, as well was interesting in its own way. I had heard of Craig, and I wanted him or someone from Heron to come on, and I actually called him and spoke about the podcast, and lucky enough that he'd heard of it, and straight away he was like, Kevin's the guy for this, and I think that's a little insight into like the kind of leader he is.
Yeah, that's what makes a great leader, right? Is knowing who to put in the place to execute the action, not themselves doing it, but putting the right people in the right places. And that's what he's got a knack for, an eye for, and the talent he brings in. That's what I was saying earlier. Like the company and the talent that we have to execute is amazing.
Yeah. Let's just talk about your role in the company now as well. Like what do you do? Where do you fit into the whole strategy of Heron?
Yeah, so I was brought over as the senior vice president of medical affairs, strategy, and engagement. So a very long title there, but so the medical affairs role is being out there discussing clinical practice, if you will, scientific exchange with our healthcare providers, talking about best practices, clinical literature, things that can't be discussed sometimes by our territory business managers, things outside of the package insert. Sometimes we're having deeper discussions as far as other concomitant medications or disease state factors and outcome data. So that's definitely an exciting piece for me. That's much what I did as a pharmacist practicing for 20 years is having those discussions, those clinical questions that, aren't as straightforward answers. So I enjoy that now because it's on a broader scope. And I get to specialize in our four medications. So that's really nice, but also on the disease states, which I love. So that's the medical affairs component. I also get the strategy and engagement component. Engagement, I guess this is example 1A here, sitting here engaging with you. I also focus on strategy, whether it's, where we're going with the company, what are the medical needs out there. I keep my finger on the pulse. I do still practice clinically. So I understand, I see it from internal needs, and then I'm able to discuss and have those constructive conversations about what direction should we be heading, how do we improve, how do we advance what's out there on that strategy perspective. Also involved as far as market access, marketing, reimbursement on the investor scene on Wall Street, investor days, analyst calls and discussions. So my role is pretty vast, and I enjoy all of those aspects of it. I'm passionate about healthcare. Number one is that's my goal, and to achieve the optimal outcomes for our drugs and for our patients in the community and the entire paradigm and across the world eventually is to be able to have this education, this scientific exchange, and spread this knowledge and information on multiple platforms. So it's a diverse role, and it's been very exciting first 6 months for me.
Yeah. And I'm always really intrigued by people like you and your mindset. You guys are, you're there to make a difference, but also you got the dynamic that you are working as a business, and there's investors and money behind it as well. But like, how do you get yourself in the right headspace, keep yourself driven, and all of that?
I love that question. We just went through a series of interviews hiring new medical science liaisons at Heron, and that was one of my questions to them is I want to know what motivates them, what gets them up in the morning, what time do you get up in the morning? So I think there's different breeds of people, if you will, as far as motivations, and some people are financially motivated, some people are motivated by promotional type, some people are public figures, some people just want to get things done quietly and just want to be published in literature and never seen or never known. So there's all different walks and scopes of how that goes. For me personally, it always has been medicine first and caring about people. And I think if you put care up front and most important in your life, it returns back to you. People then care about you and relate to you. And I think people can see that and feel that when they talk to a person. They know if somebody's genuine. They know somebody wants to do what's right, what's best, and advance things for everybody in the world. If we all work together and have that common goal, I think we all get there and we have a better world and better outcomes. So for me, every day is, just striving to be better, striving to make a difference, and just genuinely caring about each function I do during the day, whether it's playing golf, working out in the morning. Maybe I need to care a little more about golf because still working on that quite a bit. But I think, that's my day to day is getting up and just trying to make a difference and showing that care.
Yeah, I think that's so important. have these conversations, and I've had them with some real industry veterans, and they often look back at their career and think they wish they had a better work-life balance, and often that moment it changes. You look as big as a guy like Bill Gates. He didn't believe in weekends. He didn't believe in holidays. He was really serious about what he was doing at Microsoft. But he said it was when he became a father that everything kind of clicked into place, and you realise what else was really important in life. So I think all these things like gym, golf, like everything's you've got to have that.
Yeah, you got to have your foundations, your day to days, and you pointed out something there. I think there's a certain ingrainment in people that this becomes part of them. Work, whether it's in industry or whether it's in healthcare. A lot of people dedicate their entire life that. You see physicians, working well into their 70s, still doing what they love, doing what they're passionate about. A lot of our executive team was actually previously in retirement, quote unquote, per se, and they came back to industry. I feel like they got bored at home and they're
Yeah,
like, let's do this again. Let's do another round.
I hear that story so often, and it's so good. An opportunity comes across the desk, and it's like I cannot turn that down.
Yep.
Finally, what advice would you give to aspiring pharmacists and pharmaceutical scientists who are looking to make a significant impact?
Yeah, I mean, my advice: pharmacy's a great industry, high need, high demand. It's definitely evolving and changing as we see, the big industry players go into different things from a retail perspective. But from a clinical perspective, the need for pharmacists continues to expand, meaning that in our hospitals and our institutions and our clinics, more of an active provider role is the direction pharmacy is going. So medical school and pharmacy school and the amount of knowledge and medications that continue to come out to the market just expands at a rapid pace, right? So keeping up with that, having a drug specialist, if you will, in a pharmacist is critical. But for an aspiring pharmacist and clinician coming out of school, it's really, you got to follow your passion. You don't want to just go in day to day, punch the clock, get in, get done, know a little bit about everything. That's nice, but have a passion, have a focus, excel in an area, make a difference, make an impact. You're going to get noticed when you do that, especially if you have aspirations to climb and advance, depending on what your goals are. Is it management? Is it industry? Is it drug approval and manufacturing medications? Is it discovering a new medication or therapeutic needs? So there's plenty of opportunities within the pharma industry. I was lucky in my path. I think luck is one way to look at it, but I think it was also because of my desires and my passions taking me down a path that opened up doors and gateways. And so I think if you focus on what you love and what your goals are in life, they tend to happen. If you do it the right way and truly care about people and care about what you do, again, just bringing that back. So for me to land here at Heron in the perioperative space, doing what I do at Osteo Therapeutics with VTX7, I couldn't have dreamt of a better pathway. And my involvement at Heron Therapeutics now with Aponvie and Zenrelief and Sustol and Cinvanti are just great opportunities to go out and educate people and really change how we practice medicine in those specific areas and impact patient lives for the better. So something that I'm living a dream, I guess, right now at this point. So check back with me in a few years and see what I'm doing then.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. Definitely, I think that's a great place to end the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, Kevin.
Appreciate your time, Max. Take care.
Yeah. Please, everyone, like, subscribe to the BioHub, and thank you again, Kevin. Pleasure.